What's going on, guys? Welcome back to another episode of Stereotherapy. I'm your host, Lisa. Justine is my partner in crime over here. And if you're new here, this is the show that showcases the importance of music and mental health. Before we get into our awesome guests today, let's take care of business. You know how we do. If you love this show, if you like it a little bit, or you sort of like it, make sure to follow us and subscribe to the show. It would mean so much to us as a little way to support us, and you will never miss an episode that way. As well as if you really enjoy this thing, leave us a positive rating or review. It really goes a long way and it helps not only our podcast, but do it for all the podcasts you love because it truly helps them as well. Our guest on the show was Johnny of the Wildfires Projekt. Johnny was a guest we thought for a very long time. We made the connection and we finally got this set up. I really appreciate Johnny taking time out of his busy schedule to fit us in and have this wonderful conversation. We obviously talk about his music, love of video game music, which was awesome to have that conversation on here, elder emo, and of course, we talked about Johnny being a wonderful mental health advocate to his fans and just all of us that come across his page on Instagram and beyond. It was such a wonderful conversation. Can't thank Johnny enough. Here's my conversation with Johnny of the Wildfires Projekt. I would love to know, though, for you, something we ask everybody is what are their first memories of falling in love with music, whether it's a record, an artist, or a lot of people say they've been in the car and they'll hear something mom and dad put
hmm
on. For you, what has that been?
My earliest would be like, God, back when I was 4 or 5. Being from New Jersey, my dad was a huge Bruce Springsteen fan. So
Mhm.
we went to my first Bruce Springsteen concert. I think I was 6 years old. He used to always listen to it in the garage, working out, or whenever we drive with him to construction sites. So my first 3 or 4 concerts were Bruce Springsteen concerts.
Oh
Um,
my gosh.
so that was pretty cool. And I got my first guitar when I was 6 or 7, alongside a Totally Hits #1 CD way back when.
Yeah. Oh gosh,
So,
I remember. Yeah, that. And then there's so many of those.
mhm.
Wow.
So that, yeah, way back.
Oh, that's so and again, like being from New Jersey, I know even I always loved Bruce because my mom and dad, and that's what they
Mhm.
would listen to. But being here, there's just something so special about being in New Jersey and hearing Bruce
Yeah.
and just knowing that, like, wow, like he was at the Stone Pony, and this is where like
Mhm.
this, and you might even run into him sometimes when he, and I know he's always in town sometimes.
Oh
So that's
yeah, I've never
wow.
ran into him, but people always, yeah, I ran into him. I ran into Bon Jovi.
Yeah.
Where I was from in New Jersey was more towards where like My Chemical Romance and Hidden in Plain View lived, and the Jonas Brothers and things like that. So
Oh, that's just as cool. Like, come on, the Jonas
yeah.
Brothers, you got that's I mean, and a lot of your content for anyone that knows you that is gonna listen to this, a lot of people know you from like your reels, everything you post, your elder emo kind of content, which
Yeah.
I know I gravitated towards. What do you think for you has been so special about that era and why everybody still cares so much about it? I mean, myself included.
Yeah, it's it's kind of, I've seen this online, and it's kind of weird to think about, when we were in, I don't know how old you are, but when I was in high school, which was between like 2006 and 2010, the 80s was cool and
Yeah.
popular and everyone liked that. It's the same age gap now, like from
Mhm.
the 80s was for us. So it's got a nostalgia appeal. I think what's helped is definitely social media, but it's nice to see real music. And I'm not discounting other forms of music. What I mean is like not carbon copy pop songs. I
Mhm.
love pop music, but I think people maybe wanted to hear something different. Now you're hearing emo artists move into country music. You
Yeah.
heard rap artists, Nelly did stuff in with Florida Georgia Line a while ago. And I think people are craving things that are a little different than what major labels are essentially forcing you to hear on the radio. So I think that helps a lot. I think the authenticity of it helps a lot. And then, mental health is a big thing. And what's more mental health related than super sad and angry music?
Yeah, it's sometimes I think when I had TJ on from Our Space, and he was
Hmm.
talking about how, our August Burns Red, he brought them up in the mental health conversation and how it's, angry music for happy people, or happy music for angry.
Yeah.
I forget that term, but it was like, I didn't even think about that. I mean, I
Hmm.
grew up around all that music, but it's like, yeah, like some of us just gravitate towards that, whether it's angry music or, like My Chemical
Yeah.
Romance is larger than life still to this day. And I think, again, there's such huge mental health advocates.
Hmm. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah. So, I mean, because it's
But
like
hey,
when,
I'm glad it's back.
oh,
I don't care
oh,
why it's back, but it's back.
oh, exactly. Because I mean, I graduated in 2005. So again, I'm a little older, but it's one of those things
Okay.
that era, like it still was there. Like that's when it was
Hmm.
kicking off. But I mean, there's people that are even older than me. They're like, I was at the first Warp Tour. I was doing all that. And
And then
like,
there's that whole
man.
argument. I always keep everything super nice on the
Mhm.
line. I don't let my New Jersey attitude show in many comments.
Yeah.
But some guy was going back and forth with me about like I, it was a post I did recently. It was the one where it's like the two of us drinking coffee, listening to emo music together.
Yes.
One, he
Yeah,
was
yeah.
like, it's like, oh, you don't know what emo music is. You put Hawthorne Heights, it's a post-hardcore song. And I'm like, who's more emo
Yes.
than Cut My Wrists and Black My Eyes?
Yes.
Like, that's kind of the epitome right there.
Uh,
So I had like a discussion about how genres change. Yeah, you may have
mhm.
been the OG, but I mean, rock music, you don't call Led Zeppelin just rock anymore. They're classic rock. Genres redefine themselves and change as things go on. And some people, though, you know, I was here first type of or the whole I liked AFI when they were punk,
Oh,
but when they did, Miss Murder, I totally dropped off them.
oh, I thought, I
I
mean, we
like
hear,
both.
yeah, like we hear that. I mean, a lot of people, Fall Out Boy is one,
Mm-hmm.
how they started and how they're now. And it's like I growing up in the burbs of Illinois and near Chicago, it was like they are that sacred band to me. So again, like
Mm-hmm.
I'm always nice too, but when someone
Yeah.
comes after me about Fall Out Boy, I'm like, that's when it'll now the New Jersey and
Yeah.
me. So
I also think people don't realize a lot with like Fall Out Boy is a great example, from what they used to sound like to, how they are now.
yeah.
Being in a band is very costly, especially at, in this type of scene at a younger age. If someone comes up to you and you're a band struggling to make it and they're like, hey, if you shift your sound a little bit, you'll be able to succeed and live for the rest of your life. 99% of us are going to take that deal.
Oh,
I'm not going
oh,
to go,
yes.
oh yeah, I don't want to be a little more pop and I'll be broke. I'd rather be like,
Mhm.
yeah, I'll change a little bit and make a lot of money.
Yeah.
it's,
Oh,
it's not selling out, it's selling. That's what my brother would always
oh,
say.
I love that. That's so true because my fiance will say the same thing. He goes, anybody that says anything about Fall Out Boy, but I love the way you put it. I think it's
Mm-hmm.
perfect. And there's still Fall Out Boys larger than life these days. So you know what? They're doing something right.
I'm sure they don't care what those opinions are.
No, absolutely not. So I mean, but I mean, even talking about your music, you had a song
Mm-hmm.
recently come out with Outline and Color,
Yep.
Rapture. How has the response been on your end with that?
So that's actually it's interesting. So last year was the first time I did, something themed off a video game, and I wasn't sure how it would go. So I kind of kept it. There's content in it that is like the game, but it's also a little more generic so that if people don't know the game, they can still pull some sort of connection to it. And I was like, you know what? Ice Nine Kills did it with horror movies and that thing
Hmm.
took off. And there's,
Yeah.
people are always talking about Tony Hawk's Pro Skater, introduce them to all this music and stuff. I was like, why don't we just give that a try? Did it for Fallout last year with Going Blind. It was probably the biggest pickup of all the other songs. I mean, the YouTube video has like 160,000 plays on it. The streams bumped up real quick from that one. That was the time the videos started taking off that I was doing. So I thought, why don't I try it again with another game? And the same thing happened. I released it and it, it blew up. And I think it was just a missing connection that people haven't heard too much in music. And part of that idea came from Wizards of the Coast whenever they release a new Magic the Gathering set. I think it's the guy in Primus. He writes like an album for every set.
Oh, wow.
So I figured I'd try it out. It's worked. I think I'm gonna keep doing it, but not as like in every song type of thing. Like I'm working on a song now. I can't really talk about it. It's
Mhm.
gonna have some really, really, really cool on it. Biggest feature yet, but it has nothing to do with video games. It's just a pop punk song about relationships. So I think I'm gonna kind of alternate and do the game thing every now and then the real lyrics every now and then, just kind of back and forth. Have fun with it.
Oh, yeah, and I mean, I think that's one another cool thing about having you on was, okay, because I think when we think about the importance of music, some of us maybe don't think about video game music or how
Mm-hmm.
that and is I mean, in my house, it's so important. My fiance's downstairs, probably, I think, Final Fantasy. That's what he's playing. He's a
Yeah.
big Final Fantasy guy and into all that. For you, how has music video game music made an impact on you? I mean, clearly, you're putting it into your music and making
Yeah.
it into that. So, I mean, that aside for you, I mean, even growing up, what is it about video game music that's so important?
I guess one of the most obvious things is just play a game and play it with the music and play it without the music.
Mhm.
What's more motivating, exciting, like what gets you into it? I found this on the boardwalk recently when I was in Wildwood with a stupid crane game. And my wife just looked at me because she's laughing, and I think she knows exactly what I'm going to mention. So I love crane games. We were crushing it, and I got to this, and it's like this cheesy disco music that kind of plays on the crane. It's like the doons, doons, doons. So we're
Yeah.
playing it and we're rocking out, and then we go to play the crane game next to it, and there's no music, and I'm like, well, this is the most boring experience of my life. There's no
Yeah.
excitement. There's no
Yeah.
suspense. So I mean, it's just like people say, listening to music is a soundtrack to their life. It's literally a soundtrack while you're doing something. And you've had Breaking Benjamin do Halo. You've had,
Mhm.
I think all of us found Goldfinger from Tony Hawk Pro Skater
Yeah.
1. So there's just so much to it. And something interesting to me that kind of happened while playing Fallout, because Fallout's all old timey music.
Mhm.
And my great aunt used to always say, she's passed away recently. She was very old.
Oh, so
Like,
sorry
hey,
to
why
hear
don't
that.
you? Oh, it's good.
Yeah.
But she would always say, oh, why don't you cover a song from the 40s or from the 30s? And I'd be like, hey, I do rock music. I want to scream and I want to jump up and down.
Yeah.
Now, after playing Fallout for like the past couple of years, I'm like, you know what? It would be really cool to redo like a 40s song. And now, so now that she's passed away, I finally was like, you know what? That's a good idea. I'm gonna do it now.
Uh,
Thanks for that.
Yeah, I it is, and it's interesting you said that because although, like, I'll play video games. I love like I just beat the new Kirby game that's been out for a while. I
Mhm.
love a Kirby game. So even that, the music in that in every area, I think about that as you were saying that. Like if I had it off, I'd just be playing Kirby and like whatever.
Mhm.
But as it's going through each little level, it's even on that level where maybe it's not like your Fallout or Call of Duty or anything like that.
Yeah.
That's the like, it just shows how important it is, like in a cute little like kids
Mhm.
game, but like for gamers like me that like I can't game for the life of me. I've tried to play.
I'm not that great either.
I've tried the little like any shooters. Like when my fiance's like, "Come on, like we'll do it together." I was like, "No, I have the aim. I do not have the proper
Yeah.
aim. I'm dead within seconds." And then it's like, all right, it's not even fun anymore.
My wife has the Switch. I have the Xbox. So we
There we
played
go.
plenty of Mario Party and all of that.
Yes. Yeah, I mean, and I guess for you, I mean, I know Fallout is one of your favorites. Is there a favorite song from a video game for you that sticks out?
I mean, the one that sticks out now, just because of the game and the TV series, is "I Don't Want to Set the World on Fire" by the Ink Spots, because that's just like the main track that you always hear in Fallout and Bioshock, which is what
Mhm.
Rapture is based off of. So if you can tell, I'm kind of keeping with a post-apocalyptic theme where
Mhm.
people destroy their environments.
Yeah.
But then, I kind of mentioned it earlier when I was a kid and I just got my N64. Superman by Goldfinger was the song I always wanted to hear dropping into, the first level of Tony Hawk.
Yeah.
So I didn't even find out until years later who that was, because in the 90s,
Right.
I was like 7 years old. We didn't really have the internet access, didn't have iTunes and all that. So it wasn't until much later I was like, oh, that's who does that song.
Mhm. Yeah. Oh, I know. And wild to think about. I mean, even hearing like when I heard about Rapture and BioShock and that inspiration, I was like, I remember years ago, somebody I dated was playing BioShock Infinite. And I
Mhm.
remember when they beat it, and it was this whole big thing. And even me really not being into games was like, oh my gosh, this ending is so cool. This is so amazing.
Yeah.
So I think that's like, I think so many of us, maybe if anyone's listening, like go back and think about those video games and the importance because like
Mhm.
the music's there.
Well, both songs kind of lined up perfectly because I was writing Going Blind, and then they announced the Fallout TV show. And I trust me, I tried to get this song to the producers to be like
Yeah.
some sort of music, and I couldn't get
Mm,
in touch with them. But now this song came out, and apparently they've been in the works trying to do a Bioshock movie. So now I have someone else to try and contact. Hey,
ooh,
use this song. But so now I'm just constantly thinking when I do another one, like, do I keep the same theme? Do I try to find something that's going to be a movie? Because that's another thing people don't think about. Licensing is
mhm.
where artists really make their money. An old song I wrote in like 2011 just got placed in a Hallmark movie or a Hallmark TV show, which apparently is really good. I got to watch it once I remember the name of it. But it's 13 years ago, and it's like, wow, I'm finally getting paid for that song.
Yeah.
So
Oh,
if I can write stuff that fits into multiple categories, it's better.
yeah. Oh, and I mean, another reason why we definitely wanted you on was you're a huge mental health advocate. And I
Mhm.
love to see that because I think we're now in 2024. I'm like, wait, what year are we in now? We're 2024. And I think it's so great to see that. And I mean, whether it was your nonprofit you had with, anti-bullying and suicide prevention, bringing that into schools and even the Warped
Mhm.
Tour I was seeing, which is amazing. And now I'm like, oh,
Yes.
maybe did I see that in some capacity? For you, what are you most proud of with doing that and using your platform?
It's interesting because I think about it a lot. Um, and obviously it's a very, very big part of what we do or what I do, I guess, because
Mhm.
technically I'm a solo project under a band name.
Mhm.
Um, but I don't know, I'm trying to find the way to phrase it. Like I'm proud of it, but I don't have like pride about it, if that makes any sense. Like I'm glad I do it, but I don't just go and talk about it and be like, hey, look
Mhm.
what we did. We did this amazing thing. And
Yes.
so it's very more, I guess you could say, personal than outspoken. But I try to always make connections with people at shows and online, and I do talk about it, but I think there's just so much talking about it now, it's hard to make it seem sometimes authentic instead of like, oh hey, everyone's doing this.
Yeah.
So I'm proud of what I've done. I'm proud of what my former band members have done with me, but it's just like normal. It's not like something I see as something that I'm trying to do. It's just I do it. I guess that's the best
Yeah.
way to say it.
Oh, I mean, you're so right because I think nowadays too, everyone's quick to maybe make a post. It's okay to not be
Mhm.
okay. And I love that messaging of it's okay to not be okay. But a
Yeah.
lot of times it stops there and it's just, okay, here's your
Yeah.
post. And like you said, it's not as authentic because it stops there. But people, we want more awareness and we
Yeah, and
want
I
more
think
of
there's a
that.
couple, like, obviously awareness is good, but to at some point it's like awareness without action
Mm-hmm.
doesn't do that much. And obviously, I'm not criticizing anybody. Anything helps.
Yeah.
But then on the flip side of things, which is it can be a really uh, troublesome area to even talk about, especially on things like a podcast. I think a lot of people have just glamorized depression,
Mm-hmm.
um, and anxiety and things like that. I see people online and they see it as like an image or oh yeah, look how cool I am for this, and it shouldn't be that way. And I think that's kind of watered down the message in a sense. It's like there are people who struggle, and then there are people who you know, oh, I didn't do good on this test. I'm depressed.
Mm-hmm.
You're not depressed. You're suffering a moment of being upset and you are feeling depressed. But there's a difference between feeling depressed and actually living that way. Um, so it's great that there's awareness, but I also think in some respects it gets watered down sometimes. So it's like this kind of love hate balance I have. Like, oh, this is great, but also it's kind of like music. Everybody has access to record music now, which is amazing. But at
Mm-hmm.
the same time, it's not, because now people who are really talented are getting drowned out by people who are not as talented.
Yes.
So it just becomes harder for people to make themselves known. It's the pluses and minuses of the internet.
Oh, yeah. Oh, and it is. And I'm glad that we're seeing more people talk about mental health, but it's like you said, you'll see online quizzes where they'll take it and again, sometimes those are good to maybe think if you're thinking a
Yeah.
certain way, but just because you take that quiz or just
Mhm.
because, and there is sometimes the glamorizing of it. Like I have an anxiety disorder and it's something where people will say, oh, oh, just don't worry. Or I worry a lot. So maybe I have anxiety. And it's like two
Yeah.
different things. Like, and it is, do I worry sometimes? Yeah, but that's not solely because of my
Yeah, and
disorder,
I
you
think
know?
the big dividing factor is when you have anxiety or depression, a lot of times you're feeling it when there's no reason to feel it.
Yes,
Um,
100%.
like I just feel that little like electrical feeling like in my chest all day long. Think it could
Yes.
be even on my trip, I was having the
Mhm.
greatest time in Wildwood, and then the stupidest things would pop up in my head. Like I got off the plane in New Jersey and immediately it was like, oh my God, my trip's almost over. I got to do
Mhm.
everything. I'm like,
Yeah.
chill. You
Yeah.
literally just got off the plane. Relax.
Oh my gosh, there's so many times I have to say that, like, "Just okay, just
Yep.
realize." I'm the same. I can feel that where there's so
Mhm.
many times when we'll be doing something, whether it's a trip or we're in the middle of something, and it's like,
Yeah.
"All right, you can take it down. It's
Yeah.
okay."
Because I mean, when I look at things, I have no reason to be depressed. Like I have fortunate enough to have a good family. I'm
Mhm.
married. I have a
Yeah.
place to live, and I get to do things I love. But sometimes you're just feeling like, wow, everything's great, but why am I feeling depressed? What is missing when I have everything? And I
Mhm.
think that's kind of where the line is. Like, do you feel that even when things are going really, really well? Anxiety, I think that's always going to be there when you're in a
Yeah.
band. There's always
Oh,
going to be a challenge. Or when I did my show, I've even been debating doing another season, and I've been talking to some companies, and I could totally give it a go. But then I
yeah.
just think about how much pressure that puts me under for months,
Yeah,
and I
I'm
don't know
sure.
if I want to deal with that.
Yeah.
Um, so there's a lot.
Oh, because I was gonna ask about your show, like,
Hmm.
that was really cool. I had no idea. I think I've seen it on the internet before. I'm like, I had no idea that was you at first. Like,
Yes.
following you, I was like, "Oh my gosh." Like, I know you got to interview, like, Craig Owens and all these things.
Hmm.
Like, this is really, really cool, and that I feel like although we had, like, TRL back in the day,
Hmm.
right now, we don't really have I mean, there's podcasts. Everybody has a podcast. I'm
Yeah.
guilty. Everybody's guilty, but how cool would that be? Although a lot of stress, but how cool would that be to have that right now?
Yeah. So what happened was, so I was working for a very shady production company that I didn't like. I didn't
Mhm.
realize they were shady at first.
Yeah.
They did like TV shows and things like that. And I started realizing like, oh, I don't like this place. And B, I have this really cool show idea that I should maybe bring to them. And my coworker said, absolutely do not bring them your show idea. They're going to ruin it.
Mhm.
Um, so I was playing around with the idea. I was like, this would be a great way as an unsigned artist to kind of give younger bands the opportunity to open for bigger artists without having to deal with all the political things and gatekeeping that goes around it. And I was like, wow, this will be great for other artists. This is something I've always wanted, and even I can take part in. I mean, my music, I played on 2 of the episodes. That's
Mhm.
the very first season. Ronnie Winter from Red Jumpsuit sang with us, and we ended up doing a record together and a tour together. So those were like the types of things that I wanted to do with the show. But I started it with zero knowledge, $0.
Mhm.
I found a contract we were using at the production house, and I modified it to be what I thought I needed for the show. I was researching what cameras I can get on a budget. So every season has been me and usually just a videographer with friends helping out every now and then. So everything from budgeting to sponsorships to booking the bands to promotions to marketing, all of that I have to handle myself because I don't have money to pay anybody. I don't make money off the show.
Mhm.
I never got funding from like a network. It's just mostly sponsors will donate things, and I will put all the expenses on a credit card and then hope to sell all the stuff later to make my money back.
Ooh.
So it's crazy how much, two people a season we were able to accomplish. The amount of bands and the interest. Like I was cold calling bands, and I found out it's a lot easier to get in touch with them than you think.
Mhm.
But like, Ronnie Winter was a good example. I shot him an email and he like called me up, like, "Hey, what's up, man? What are you doing?" And I was like, "This is weird."
Yeah.
And that was very full circle because when I was in high school, he played a show. Red Jumpsuit played a show at my brother's college, and we went and we got by their tour bus, and we gave him our horrible CD at the time, and it was like, wow, however many years later, now Ronnie is writing a CD with me. He performed
Mhm.
on TV with me. We went on tour with him. Like it was all these surreal things that happened, and it led into a lot. I mean, so the I've worked with, let's see, so we released A Letter to Myself, which used to be a full EP of 5 songs, but I only left 2 online. So those other 3 are not anywhere unless you have the original CD. I
Mhm.
might put them up eventually. Did a couple more songs, eventually took those down because when I started this project, it was the first time I was able to actually just do what I wanted musically. So I was trying things, creating things. If I felt it didn't match anymore, I took it down. But then after those like 7 songs or whatever is when I did that CD From Which We Came. Um, that was done with Ronnie. He wrote it with me. He's actually, if you listen to the songs on that record, he's doing the harmonies in most of them. All the
Oh.
really, really high parts are him, which was really
Oh.
cool. And then John Espy, who's the drummer from Red Jumpsuit, mixed it. And since that moment, everything after that has been John and I writing together. We found out he lived 2 streets up the road from me. So throughout COVID, it was just me and him in a garage,
Oh, that's
churning
so
out record
cool.
after record after record. And, he did Rapture and all the other ones, and we're working on a song now. And so the show alone was launched so many different things I couldn't have imagined happening otherwise. So I would love to do it again. I would love to give other artists the opportunity. It's just like I can't go to a videographer and be like, "Hey, I'll pay you at some point,
Mhm. Yeah.
but not now."
Yeah. Oh,
So,
yeah. I can Oh,
and if I
man.
were to do it again, there's some things I would like to try. Instead of it just being exclusively like pop punk emo type of music, I'd like to do an episode where it's rap. I would like
Mhm.
to do an episode where it's even Christian artists, just literally getting everybody the opportunity. But then, of course, mostly focusing on pop punk and emo music.
Oh, I mean, talk about that full circle moment for you. That's so cool. And I think
Mm-hmm.
and even talking about the Wildfires Project, which the name alone, I know you've said for your mental health awareness and the name behind that. And I think for you, you've almost created that community, I would say, of when I look at your post, like you're not alone. And,
Mm-hmm.
point of view, if you follow somebody, whether it's depression or anxiety. And I think that's so great and unique to kind of form that community. For you, how
Mm-hmm.
has this project helped your own mental health?
Ups
I
and
mean,
downs.
yeah.
Definitely a lot of stress. That's always going to be with anything that you would consider starting your own business. Music, it
Yeah.
is a business, whether people like to think of it or not. But also just being able to write what I want to write and release it how I want and perform. The performance is really where you get that energy out. So it's definitely therapeutic. It allows me to write what I need to write and show it to people because I'd rather do that than talk about it.
But I think that's so important to have that because I think so many times, whether they're younger kids or even people our age, right, that are looking for someone that's maybe been through something similar that they can relate
Mm,
to. And especially music is that universal language where maybe you don't want to talk about it or you can't talk about it, but you put on someone like yourself or other artists and you finally feel seen.
mhm.
Yeah.
Do all I can do is what I can do.
Yeah.
And
And
luckily for some people that works.
yes. I mean, and I know I was reading too and like doing a little bit of research on you. Something you said that I think was so important that I wanted to have on here about the fact that how important it is to be there for each other. And even
Mhm,
when people may say, they're good, or maybe they don't need the help, or maybe they're not ready to ask for it. We have to be there. And I think that
Mhm.
was so important because how many times in my life and other people's lives, right, when they're struggling, oh, I'm fine, I'm good. But in reality, like you could use a little help. And I think for you, how do you think we can, if we're on the outside and we see someone struggling, how can we maybe help someone through that?
Honestly, I think a lot of times people try and pry too much in a caring way and get to
Hmm.
the root of it.
Yeah.
But sometimes the simplest thing, like a buddy of mine, neither of us are good about talking about emotions or things like that out loud.
Hmm.
We we just won't.
Yeah.
But if there's something that seems to be wrong, or I know something happened in his life, it'll just be like, hey, um, I know you're probably going through some things. You're available. Just make yourself available. Or one of my friends, his grandma had passed away a few months ago, and I just went to him. I was like, hey, I'm not good at the whole emotional thing.
Hmm.
Like, are you good? And he's like, I'm good. I'm like, okay, cool. So
Yeah.
that's the best I can do. And for him, that worked. That was all he needed, was to know that. So you don't really have to even know what's going on. Just say, hey, if you need anyone to talk to, I'm here. I think that's the best way to start. Uh, I'm trying to think if there's like other examples, but it's usually just very casual. Um, if you notice it, feel it out. I have another
Hmm.
friend who, his way of coping is really bad humor.
Hmm. Yeah.
He will take his life situations that are very, very bad and make jokes about them. And I'll have to go, do you want me to like laugh, or do you want me to
Yeah.
join in with you? And
Yeah.
he'll be like, I need you to join in with me. I'm like, all right, here we go.
Yeah.
Can't believe I'm about to make a joke about this.
Yeah. That's a good thing to bring up too, because I think sometimes when people are using humor to get
Mm.
by, maybe some people don't think they're being as serious, but some people use that as a way to cope and get their feelings out. So that's so important.
Oh yeah, I mean, humor is it for me. Humor is it for a lot of my friends. The way we talk about issues is joking about issues.
Hmm.
A lot of self-deprecating humor.
Yeah. Hey, whatever works for everybody. And
Yep.
it's for you something we love to ask. I mean, besides music and maybe besides video games, for you, what tools do you use for your mental health? Like if you're going through something, a lot of people say exercise, that's a big one. I know, but for you, like say someone is like trying to always think of a new way maybe to get through something.
For me, it's anything that pulls focus away from what is. So I have a lot of just like repetition of thoughts in my head. So anything that can pull me away from that to focus
Hmm.
on something else, which video games are great for that. I could sit
Yeah.
there and now I have to focus on something else. TV and movies, they're great, but they can't do that, because the difference is when I'm watching a show, I could easily pick up my phone or do
Hmm.
this or that. If you're playing a game, you have to do stuff. You have to pay
Yeah.
attention. Your mind has to be focused on that, which is why horror games are so scary, because you can't look away.
No.
Um, but I am always moving, and trying to do something, which, also has its negatives because I don't allow myself to relax enough.
Yeah.
But something for me, it's just keeping my mind occupied, um, whatever that means. Because even at restaurants, I'll get antsy because it's not like enough stimulation, or my mind's like, oh, what's that person doing? What's that person doing? Hey, what's going
Yeah.
on over there? What's going on over there? So yeah, I would just find something you enjoy doing, even if you don't necessarily enjoy it. I hate exercising, but
Hmm.
if it takes your mind off of it, that will help.
Yes.
Um, and then don't go straight to medication. I'm on medication now, but I did a lot of holistic things first. I tried changing diets, and it did really, really work, for years. And then it was just, I think it happened when I was moving, and the stress of moving, and being in between a tour and going, all these things just kind of made it finally snap. So I needed a little extra help. But I've also reduced the medication that I'm taking. So that's not always going to be the answer. It is helpful if you need it. But sometimes you can solve the solution without drugs.
Yes,
So,
you can. I love that you said that. I know Jenna from Costin, when she was on
mhm,
the show, she was saying that too as well. And even myself with the diet, it has helped me so much. And
mhm,
when we went through, my fiance had a work-related accident. We went through a lot of stress for a couple of
mhm.
years. And of course, that diet, everything went out the window and everything broke loose there. But while I was doing it, I think it is great to find holistic ways. And again, whatever works for everybody, but I'm with you. Always there are
Yeah.
some ways to try first.
And also, a lot of it is there are bad doctors who just prescribe something and say, hey, this is going to work. If it doesn't
Yes.
work, whatever. Doctor I went through, we tried like very different things very quickly until we found something that worked. But also, how many of those things have horrible side effects? I mean, you see the
Yes.
commercial.
Oh,
Here's this drug for depression, might cause suicidal thoughts.
yes.
Great. That's
Oh,
helpful.
oh,
Um,
yes.
or there was one I had taken for a moment that we switched off of, and it made me feel like I couldn't control my body. Or there was another
Mhm.
one where I was sleeping 16 hours a day. It's like, yeah, it may treat one thing, but if it's going to destroy something else, is it actually worth it?
Yes.
The ones I take now, like the main side effects is like rashes under the eyes or something. That I'm like, okay, I can do that. I'd rather be mentally sane and have
Yeah.
rashes than not.
Yes.
Um, but I don't want to be sleeping 16 hours a day, so I would rather
No.
not do that one. So
Yeah.
it's all balanced. Just it's not a one size fits all for everybody. It took me like 8 months to figure out what worked.
Yeah.
It was a long time.
I love how honest you were just about that. And I appreciate
Yeah,
that because that's something
I usually am.
because that's something that is so important that I think so many people don't think about,
Mhm.
and that there are so many things you have to weigh. Where I know for sometimes, I know some people say, oh, I gained a lot of weight on it. Now I have to shift. Do I want to, like, what do I have to do? Or it makes me sleep all day. Like, and it's one of those things. And I think it's not a one size fits all.
Yeah. And a little kind of Easter egg, the music video for A Letter to Myself, there's a lot of because that's a big story about addiction and things like that and
Yeah.
getting on medication. If you watch the video, there's a lot of medication bottles and pills and stuff like that. And I start dumping them out at the end and down the drain. All of that was the previous medication I had tried, and I used that music video to get rid of it all. So if you look at the bottles, I made sure when they captured them, they do say my name on them. They do say what
Yeah.
I was taking. So it's all of that is the real stuff that the song was written about being discarded in the video about the song. There's a part where my brother hits the drums and pills
Mhm.
pop off. Well, that was something else that I was on. So
Yeah.
I tried to link it in as creatively as possible.
Wow.
All the little authentic details.
Yeah, I'm like, I remember it now as you're saying that, but now I'm gonna go rewatch it because I remember seeing
Yeah.
that, and now that's oh wow. So again, appreciate your honesty. Again, like you said, you're about that, but it's like I know it's not always good. Let's talk about our mental health and music. But this has just been so great. And before I let you go, have a great night. I want to know. I know you already said there's a new song on the way. There's
Yes.
a feature coming, which is really exciting. You can't talk about it. Other than that, what else can we look forward to from the Wildfires project?
Yeah. So I'm trying to what I'm trying to do going forward is, and it's going to be hard because John, who I work on all my music with, he isn't in California so much anymore. Now that touring's picked back up, and
Yeah.
he has other things across the country he needs to take care of. Um, while it's going to be harder, I'm going to try and do a song a month, a release like that, and I'm going to try to couple with those different interactive esque I don't not interactive, but like I like the storytelling and music videos that I've done with the video games
Hmm.
songs. So I'd like to release music monthly with more storytelling videos because the regular music video is dead, essentially.
Yeah.
Um, but people love consuming stories. So I think that is another outlet that you can do something different. It doesn't even have to be related to what the song was originally about. Um, I could write a song about a relationship, but then I could build the story visually to mean something totally different. So coming up, just hopefully, if it works out, expect more consistent releases, more consistent content as far as visuals, and looking for a tour. So
Yeah.
or just, we'll see what happens. It's an interesting time where I'm just trying new things, and whatever sticks is going to work, and that's what I'm
Yeah.
going to go with. So
Oh,
not much of an answer, but still an
but
answer.
it still is. Like yeah, no, but oh, that's so great. Looking forward to that. I love I know Kaylee Goldsworthy is someone that we had on. I love her so much. She's doing that right
Mhm.
now where she releases a song a month and like,
Yeah.
man, that must be so hard to do that. But how cool is that to kind of have that and
Yep.
get that new music out there?
hmm
Oh my,
It's great because it allows, like, when you release an EP or an album, it's like two songs get the spotlight,
yeah.
and you're like, wow, all those other songs just kind of went under the table. So it allows each song to get its due worth. But also on the back end side, which a lot of people don't know about, is when you release music, you can submit it to a Spotify editorial.
Hmm.
You can only submit one song per release. So if you release an EP, you can only pitch one song out of those five to them. If you're doing songs individually, you can pitch every single song.
Hmm.
So
Oh,
there's a lot of
so
benefits to it like that as well.
yeah. Oh, how cool. But oh, and again, I'll post all the links below for everybody to
Yeah,
find you, go see you and your Instagram and your music and get excited for that new music coming out. But thank you so much for taking time. This has been so great. And I know everything
absolutely.
you say is going to resonate with so many people.
Thank you. I appreciate you having me.
And all right, guys, that was my conversation with Johnny. Again, I want to thank him for taking time for us. And I think he shared a lot of things that a lot of us will resonate with. And again, it was so cool once again, someone we see on Instagram or on social media, whatever platform you want to use, and then get to sit down with them and have a conversation about music and mental health and the impact. It was such a great conversation. And again, cannot thank Johnny enough. Make sure to follow all the links below. Go give him a follow and check out his music because I think it's really cool and refreshing to have. As for Justine and I, we will be back next Tuesday with a wonderful conversation. Yeah, that's right. We are having 2 episodes per week for a little bit. We're going to try it out, see how it goes because of the fact that we have so many conversations and I don't want them to be outdated. I know I've said this before, but maybe you're listening to this for the first time. So stay tuned for all the other conversations we have. Cannot wait for them. And we will see you guys on Tuesday. All right. Bye, guys.